Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. The webinar that we're going to present today is for Sustainable Future, Income Diversification Strategies for Fishing Communities in the Cayman Crown Reef to protect fish spawning aggregation sites in Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. The objective of this webinar is to highlight successful income diversification strategies to reduce fishing pressures in Cayman Crown. Our panelists will discuss how these strategies promote economic stability and sustainable livelihoods for fishers. This event seeks to facilitate knowledge sharing and inspire similar initiatives in other communities for a sustainable future in the region. I am going to give some instructions for those that need interpretation. In the Zoom controls below, you're going to be able to see the interpretation icon, and you can press in this icon and choose the language in which you want to listen in. In this case, when you select the language, you can select mute original audio so that way you will only listen to the interpretation. In this case, we are going to have all of the webinar in Spanish, but we will have one presentation. Our first presentation is going to be in English. So please, we invite you to, if you want to listen in Spanish, you can select the interpretation to Spanish and select the Spanish option and silence the original audio so that you can listen to the information in Spanish. When this presentation is over, you can then go back to the main or original audio of the webinar so that you can continue listening. If you have any question, please write it in the chat. Some of the basic rules of the webinar. We encourage a safe learning space. All microphones and cameras will be deactivated throughout the webinar. Please write your full name, the country, and the organization in the chat. You can place your questions in the chat or in the special place for questions in Zoom so that we can answer them at the end of the webinar. If you are participating on Facebook Live, you can send your questions through the comment section on Facebook, and your questions will be interpreted and answered by the presenters at the end of their presentations. We make a reminder that the opinions expressed in these webinars are responsibility only of the presenting, and they don't necessarily represent Marfin's opinion. Okay. Again, we welcome you to this 26th seminar of Marfin titled Sustainable Future, Income Diversification Strategies for Fishing Communities in Cayman Crown Reef to protect fish spawning aggregation sites, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. I am going to present our panelists. Our first panelist is Jose Coy. Jose is a professional with vast experience in accounting, financial strategies, and human resources. Has a master's in the University of West Indies and a management degree. Jose was manager of Wildlife Conservation Society in Belize, administrating fund for conservation. Right now, he's coordinating projects in time, leading efforts to protect the Reserva Marina de Cayos Zapotillos, focusing on biodiversity and the sustainable resource management. Jose is striving to improve strategies for conservation. Our next panelist is Guillermo Antonio Galvez Gargueta. from FUNDAECO that right now is coordinator of Program Mares Vivos in FUNDAECO in Guatemala, with more than 13 years of experience in management of coastal marine protected resources. He has an aquaculture degree in the University of San Carlos and has a, a next degree in social and um, he has different courses and focused on management, conservation, and restoration of marine coastal ecosystems from Ecosur sin UNESCO and others. He was part of the program of Campañas de Orgullo of Rare and uh, the leadership from the SAM and the Mesoamerican Fund for Conservation. We have two panelists from Coral Reef Alliance. Julio San Martin Chicas, he's a biologist from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Honduras and now doing his master's in science and technology. He has experience in marine management, fish monitoring, citizen science, and community work, amongst others. He makes part of the leadership generation of the MAR in 2019 and other projects from Leadership for International Visitors from the Department of the United States. He is an active member of different NGOs, Prolásate, Amatela from Honduras, and we joined Coral in 2017, and right now is in charge of the management programs of the north coast of Honduras, principally based in Valle. Then we have Antonella Rivera. Dr. Antonella is from Honduras. She is a recognized scientist with more than 14 years experience in the study and conservation of marine systems. Got her degree in the Universidad Autónoma de Honduras and Universidad de Oviedo in Spain, with vast research with 26 published papers. We are working she has been working with Coral Reef Alliance from 2017, and she has been using interdisciplinary strategies to address the necessity of conservation in the communities of Tela. These are our panelists. We now thank you for joining us. And we are going to begin with our first panelist. And we invite you all to go to the channel English so that all of you that need a translation to Spanish or English, you can listen.
Thank you, everybody. Michelle, thank you for that presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. Whether you're joining us through Zoom or through other platforms, my name is Jose Coy. I work here with the Toledo Institute for Development and Environment, TIDE, in Belize. My presentation focuses on sustainable future income diversification strategies for fishing communities. And my subtopic there is protecting fish spawning aggregation through alternative livelihood in the Sapadilla Key Marine Reserve. So my presentation encompasses an overview of the Cayman Crown. It also looks at the challenges when it comes to overfishing and also the objective of this initiative that we're looking at and also the focus area. When it comes to the overview of the Cayman Crown, it is a critical biodiversity hotspot that is located between Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize. And it is the 7.6 kilometers is within Belize and 1.9 is within Guatemala. And this area was designated or was protected in 2020, both from Guatemala and Belize. So we can see that the importance of the Cayman Crown. So, and also one of the challenge here is because of the closeness along the border with Guatemala and Honduras. We do see a lot of fishers from Guatemala and Honduras coming into Belize. So there's a lot of transboundary fishing activities there. And the challenge is the stress on the fishing resources. And we're also seeing that it is impacting the FSA sites. The objective here is to promote sustainable alternative livelihood that will reduce fishing pressures and also diversify income sources. And this presentation will look at seaweed farming and also coastal and marine-based products such as tour guide, birding, and restaurant initiatives. Next slide, please. Okay. WCS conducted an audit report of supplementary livelihood initiative in coastal Belize. This audit report was from 2014 to 2024, a 10-year span. And coming out from that report is that they recommended these top three alternative livelihood. One is seaweed farming, and also the value-added product that comes with that. Also look at coastal and marine tourism packages that emphasize on tourism training. And also it looks at sewing and craft with an emphasis on cultural heritage products. For us at Tide, we waited for this report because instead of duplicating effort, because WCS report was looking at some of our buffering communities like Punta Negra, Monkey River, and Placencia. So that's why we waited for this report to came out, and we have seen that, okay, these are the recommended alternative livelihood initiatives that fishers are interested in, that could work within our areas. So that is why we focus on these initiatives as well. Next slide, please. So Tide, we work with in southern Belize, and Zapadilla Key, as if you can see, is somewhat 37 miles from the nearest coast, which is Punta Gorda, and is about 1.5-hour boat ride. And the Summit Foundation under this Marfish project, there is an activity there that allows for us to conduct a feasibility study for income diversification opportunities for at least 3 communities around the Cayman Crown. The Cayman Crown before was not integrated within the Zapadilla Key Marine Reserve, but because of the expansion in 2020, the Cayman Crown is now protected within the Zapadilla Key Marine Reserve. So then that allows us to be able to work with these buffering communities, which is like I mentioned earlier, Punta Gorda, Placencia, and Monkey River. So that is where the focus of this project or this initiative or activity will take place. Next slide, please. At the moment, we're looking at the 3 communities, which is Punta Gorda, Monkey River, and Placencia. And we have a feasibility study that we are engaged in to see whether this seaweed farming is viable within the Zapadilla Key Marine Reserve, and also we're looking at the Port Honduras Marine Reserve, which is closer to the coastline because, like I said, it is 37 miles away from the nearest coast. So we're carrying out this study to see whether this is viable, where there's potential for seaweed farming. And we'll also look at value-added products, what are the value-added products that comes with it, like soap, cosmetics, another like fertilizer, another value-added. So we're seeing through this study whether this is viable, whether the distance, whether the product. We know that in Belize there is an existing seaweed farms. We have, like in Placencia, there the women's group that is engaged in that. There's a men's fishers group that is engaged in that. And they're a value-added product that they're working on. I think the seaweed, they do cosmetics, they do soaps and all that. So those are what we want to replicate in other communities to see whether that itself can also work, and also see the species of seaweed that can grow within the areas. And we are working with the Nature Conservancy. They're conducting site visit to see which areas would they recommend for the farms or the test plots to happen. So in July 2024, TNC did some site visits. So they're lending us the technical support for this activity. Next slide, please. So looking at this feasibility study, like I said, TNC is lending us the technical support. Our rangers will be trained in maintaining the test lines and the test plots. And our biologists will be monitoring in terms of the seaweed growth, if it is growing, what is the rate it's growing, and also be able to document all that. So we're saying that the test plot will take us about 2 months to establish and be able to have it running and be able to see, or at least be able to say that yes, this species can grow here, or this species is viable in this area. So we'll be able to get that analysis from that test plus, and also the feasibility study, which will take about 2 months. Will take about 2 months for for us to see what are the value-added products that can work along with value-added product that can work in the communities that we're looking at, right? So we're saying that this study will take us around 4 months to complete and be able to say whether, yes, seaweed farming is sustainable and viable within the Sapodilla Key Marine Reserve. Next slide, please. So that is one that we want to go into, which is seaweed. And the next other product we want to look at is coastal and marine tourism-based products and services. One is tour guide. In 2024, Tide trained 5 tour guides in fish. They're fishermen. They were trained in tour guide training, and they have been certified. One of the the rationale here is that, the fishers are extracting resources. So now this will remove them from that, and they will be engaged in ecotourism. So we're looking at marine conservation. They're looking at sustainable tourism, and also the outcome is that they become certified tour guides. They can go anywhere, and tourism is one of the top earning economy in Belize. The top earner sector in Belize. So there's a lot of job out there. So we can see that they're branching off from fishing to ecotourism. They're being engaged in the tourism industry, right? So this is one way we are seeing that, yes, fishers have an interest and they're moving away from the fishing, which has been impacted by climate change. The resources have diminished, that they are not catching like what they are catching before. So now they're branching off into other alternative income. So this is one that is working for us. We have trained, like I said, 5, and we intend to do more because we have funding for alternative livelihood. So we intend to do more tour guide trainings. And also, tour guides can be able to do, when the seaweed farms are established, they can be able to go into do seaweed farm tours, which is a win-win for us and a win-win for them as well. Next slide, please. Bird training, like Tide is doing this as well. We have certified staff that have underwent further training in birding, and this is one that we are exploring. It is a growing ecotourism in Toledo and in Belize, and the Keys and the surrounding coast do attract a lot of birds that are migrating through the area. So trainings that we want to look at is like bird identification and do environmental education, and also the proper use of equipments, and be able to engage guests in these activities. So the outcome will be the establishment of local bird guides. This will promote ecotourism, like also creating awareness about conservation. So this is an area that we have not yet explored, but we have trained our officers and are being trained so that then we can be able to enroll this program for indigenous communities that are interested to participate in this activity. Next slide, please. In 2017, Marfon, along with Tide, supported this initiative for a group of women in Punta Negra. They opened a restaurant. These fisherwomen now do not have to excessively fish. What they fish is what they use in the restaurant, so it's on a use basis. So the goal of this project was, to empower women through sustainable business ventures, and this is one good example of it. We can say that now these women have been able to earn income apart from fishing. They're able to earn income through this restaurant initiative. And also this strengthens and community cohesion, and it promotes gender equality. We work with youths, we work with women, and also indigenous communities like the Garifuna communities and the Maya communities. This is one success story for us here in Belize. Next slide, please. So the benefit and impact of income diversification is when it comes to the economic impact, it reduces community reliance on fishing, it reduces the stress on the marine resources, it creates new jobs. When it comes to the social impact, it strengthens local community with new skill set, it empower women and youth through participation in the economy. Also, the environment benefits from it because there's low fishing pressure, and also there's ecotourism that promotes environmental friendly stewardship in the community. Next slide, please. So like I said, the success stories and the case study that we have seen is that there's seaweed has good potential in Belize. Like I said, in Placencia, it is working. Some of the main seaweed products in Belize are like packaged raw seaweed, wet and dry, whether it's sold wholesale or retail. Also, we have seaweed beverages, it's flavored, unflavored, seaweed ice cream, seaweed dishes, processed seaweed gels, seaweed spa and beauty products for hair and skin. So we're seeing that there's an assortment of value added when it comes to seaweed in Belize. And another example, like I said earlier, was the Punta Negra Women's Restaurant, which attract tourists, generate income and preserve their cultural heritage. This is a Garifuna women's group, so they're able to preserve their culture through promoting their food, their typical main dishes like hudut and sere and all those, right? So they're able to preserve their culture. Example number three is where, like I said, we're able to train tour guides. Like in 2024 so far, we have trained 5, and that includes the guy doing bird watching tours and also ecotourism, friendly ecotourism tours as well with like some of the big lodge here in Toledo. So we have seen some of the success stories already playing or showing itself already. Next slide, please. So in summary, I can see that income diversification strategies such as seaweed farming and ecotourism are key to protecting the FSA sites, like the FSA sites at the Cayman Crown. This is less stress on them because less fishers are going out there because they're doing other alternative livelihood, right? So the call to action is to encourage stakeholders to support these initiatives, support your fishers, whether buying their product, supporting local businesses, because this is where how you help as well as by supporting them, right? So together, we can build a sustainable future. Next slide, please. So that is my presentation. It shows all that Marfish has been able to support tied to this feasibility study and also engagement of other initiative, how we can help our farmers, our fishers be able to seek other supplementary livelihood or alternative livelihood through initiative like seaweed farming, like ecotourism based products like tour guiding and bird watching. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. As mentioned before, my name is Guillermo Galvez. I am coordinator of the Mares Vivos in FUNDAECO in Guatemala, and today I am going to be talking about the diversification of income strategies that we have been using. And okay, so to be able to talk about these strategies, first, we need to talk a little bit about what Cayman Crown Reef is, because it was from its discovering that many work with community that started after it's discovering. Some important characteristics about this reef is that it was discovered by scientists in around 2013. It is placed right in the middle of the Gulf of Honduras, between Honduras and Belize, named Cayman Crown because of the reef crest that ends in the Great Cayman uh, depth. And it's very complex. And because of this complexity, it has a very high potential for fish spawning aggregation. And we know that in this reef, there is a high coral cover, a place with one of the places with higher coral cover in all of the Mesoamerican reef. And because of all of these characteristics that I just mentioned, this site was declared in 2020 as a permanent non-fishing zone in Guatemala. Polygon of around 1,000 hectares was established. And all of this was made without taking into account the community that took advantage of these sites. And there was no process of socializing these decision-making processes. And in the end, this had an effect and a social impact because the communities did not agree in how this area was declared without being consulted, and they closed themselves to dialogue. They did not want to communicate. And to address this problem, it was about 4 years' work of trying to approach these communities in which hopefully less resistance was achieved from the communities so that these problems could be approached. And only until the end of last year is in which we were able to achieve a dialogue and negotiation with some of the communities of the area. Another of the impacts that was identified was an economic impact from the research that we did from the leaders of the communities. We could see that more than 50% of the people focus in their livelihoods came from lobster fishing. And many of the sites, for example, like the ones you see in blue in the map, were historical fishing sites for these communities where they fished for lobsters. And many of these sites are now inside the non-fishing zone, and of course, affecting all of these families. And so we knew that we had an economic impact by the creation of the zone, but we didn't know really how much it impacted. For this, we developed a study, an economic study on the lobster fishing. And amongst the results that were presented were that the value of lobster fishing annually was about 3.8 million quetzales, and the annual income for fishermen was around 24,700 quetzales for a monthly income of around 3,000 quetzales. If we consider this average income for fishermen and the variability of this income, well, the loss of 3,000 quetzales was in fact a significant loss. And so the next step was to, okay, we already know what you are losing. We know what you are giving up by not fishing in this area. Our next step was to establish a strategy to diversify their income so that we could identify economic alternative that they would compensate for this loss that they were having for not being able to fish. For this, we hired a consultant, Pilar Velázquez, that was able to help us carry out all the process of interviews with community leaders to identify the possibilities to diversify income. There was a lot of participation, working with government institutions as well as the community. And the first thing that was done was mapping the stakeholders and all of the people involved in this protected area and all that were involved in this no-take zone and how these stakeholders and participants were able to take part in the development of these new income strategies. And we also identified other other stakeholders or other participants that could be strategic allies to strengthen these new economic strategies. We also identified three transversal strategies. The first one was focused on that understanding the necessities of the territory, not trying to separate economic strategies outside this area, because from what we were able to see was that many economic strategies didn't come through because of the distance from the communities that were being established. Moving products and all the costs necessary to carry out some of the strategies were too high. So the first one was taking into account how close and being very close to the area of where the people were carrying out their activities. The second option was presenting new income diversification strategies in a community level as well as a family level or an individual level. And the third process was making sure that there was high participation, not only us trying to identify these strategies and then just informing people, but mostly having a lot of participation with the aim of reducing how discontent the communities were and to create more success in these strategies in Cayman Crown. In this way, we prioritized 9 alternatives, 3 for every one of the sites. For Quetzalito, the activities that were identified were the production of vegetables or internal commercialization, selling of school supplies, and a corn corn mill. Sorry. From Punta Manavique, tourism-based strategies like restaurants or hotels, the selling of ice, and the selling of milk, fruit, and vegetables. And in San Francisco, selling basic products with a community store, selling ice as well, community-based, and a project to raise chickens or pigs. As you can see, these projects, we have the axis number 2 that we presented, where there was a lot of diversification that can be done at a family level. For example, cultivating vegetables or raising chicken and pigs. And other projects have a larger scale, for example, like the tourism-based idea or the communal stores. And once we had all the productive options, the idea was to socialize these projects and determine the way in which we could make these initiatives happen. And in this case, like FUNDAECO, the strategy that we use to introduce these strategies were the conservation agreements. Basically, these strategies is where we compensate economically whoever has an agreement, makes part of the agreement to conserve and protect the ecosystems, and we commit to developing their projects, their productive projects. And so these conservation agreements is a tool that permits to have more trust between the communities and the institution, because through the signing of these contracts is where we have rules where the community is going to be part of it, but the community will also allow the doing of having environmental education and different monitoring efforts so that we can strengthen the trust from the fishermen to the institution, but we are also able to increase the conservation and ecological awareness of the people that live here. And finally, we were able to have the image of the institute as an ally, as a strategic ally for the community, and not someone they have to fight against. And up till now, we have been able to sign two conservation agreements, one with the community of San Francisco del Mar and one with Quetzalito, which was the most recent one, in which they wanted to work with one of the tourism options, and that I'm going to present a little bit further along of how this project is being developed. Are there? I'm going to stop presenting so that I can present the video. Hello, my name is Josue Ayala. I am the Vice President of Concord. We have the opportunity of being filmed so that we can comment and share our stories of the project that FUNDAECO has been helping us with. And it has been a blessing that we have received in a community level, that we have had the opportunity to get more people that want to visit our site, and so that we can receive them in the best way possible. We are creating these rooms where people can come and visit, and the funding is going to be all benefiting the community to address many of the necessities of the community. From this project, from FUNDAECO, we were taught about the importance of conservation and of the different agreements that we need to be a part of by conserving. And who is not going to want to conserve? Because we all live in this fishing area. And if we as fishermen, we don't conserve what we have, in some years, our children will not have anything to fish. So it is very important for us as parents to also focus conservation for the future of our community. Okay, thank you. This was my presentation. Thank you very much, Guillermo. If there are any questions, you can write them on the chat. And we now give the time to our next panelists, Julio and Antonio. Hello, everybody. My name is Antonella Rivera, and today we're going to talk about the income diversification strategies in different Honduran communities. And we will be doing this, my partner and I. And to begin, the objective of this project was to generate a baseline, an economic baseline, to understand how the communities around Cayman Crown depend on this reef, and to be able to diversify different strategies. And so understanding as well a little bit of all the fishing pressures from the communities. And I'm not going to go a lot into the detail of Cayman Crown because they have been talked about it before. But the fishing that we see in Honduras, some consciously and some unconsciously, were fishing out of the law and it was not regulated. And what we wanted to address was this illegal fishing, but also the fishermen that didn't have any other options. So we wanted to do it in the most integrated way because we wanted this to work. It's not just creating diversification of income just because, but we want to make something that actually works. So what it is that we did was a project with two phases. In phase one, we selected the communities, the objective communities that that used to work in this area. These were the ones from Cortes and um, these were selected with government institutions by creating interviews uh, to different communities, and we interviewed 117 homes in 13 communities. And with this interviews, we made the first workshop to know the impact of what happened after we did the no-take zones. Then in the workshop two, it was co-designing strategies to reduce illegal fishing. And then lastly, different workshops and selecting the organizations. And in phase two, once the organizations were selected, um, these are the three that were chosen. The first step was more workshops on management and sustainable tourism, um, supporting and legalizing two of these three organizations, and donating equipment for the three of these organizations, and of course, continuous and um, support and monitoring. So the preliminary details to understand what was happening, we see that 55% of the fishing homes, of the homes that were part of the study, were related to fishing. And in 45%, this was the main activity. So even though some people say that there is no fishing is not anymore very important, these numbers said that it was. So the average fisherman is about 30 years old with a primary education and has to support at least four people, talking about generally large family, using mainly different uh, fishing fishing techniques, using fish line and hook and fishing nets, and also using harpoon and other fishing strategies. Now going a little bit, talking more about the fishing, we could see that only 1.5% of the homes were fishing exclusively in Cayman Crown, um, which could tell us uh, that the no-take zones are affecting um, their livelihoods greatly. And the reason is the reason why more and more fishermen are moving to Cayman Crown is that they have seen a reduction in their captures of around 70%. So every time they have to be moving more and more further away. And so we asked them if, as they go farther into the ocean, they are getting more winnings. But we were able to see that only 22% of the people were always taking profit out of their fishing trips. All of the rest sometimes had income and sometimes they didn't. But most of all, we talked about how fishing is their identity and how it's part of their culture. And what was really interesting was that we were talking about more than 90% um, answered that fishing was part of their identity, that we couldn't just come in and change whatever they did because it is part of their identity. Um, it can't be an alternative. It can just be addressed as a diversification. And the good thing is that not everything is lost. Um, right now, we can see that there is already a lot of income diversification. These are all of the different activities that the fishermen do. We see a lot related to fishermen. Some we can also see their own business. Others are working in tourism. Um, and we were able to notice that they are open-minded to incorporating new livelihood methods. Um, Ecotourism was one of the principal interests that generated a response. And then also talking a little bit about how they were interested also in all of the process of selling of the fish. So the process of co-designing strategies with the community was part of the first workshop during the time of COVID. And so when we presented the results, the impact of the closure of the Cayman Crown for fishing, people were generally agreed with the results of the results. They understood that there was a big decrease in fishing, but they were also open to diversifying their strategies. And they were very, very clear on stating that these strategies had to respect their cultural background and incorporating elements that could use and take advantage of the knowledge that they already had. Because that is just a historical knowledge that they believed was necessary to keep. The second workshop was a little bit more focused on the illegal fishing and what were the effects of this illegal fishing, how we could stop it, and what the local people could do to integrate and think about solutions. We also mentioned that we need a lot of bilateral cooperation. Honduras, not having part of Cayman Crown, was not informed officially of the new regulations. But we know it's very important that it's very important to take into account all of this illegal fishing. But the strategies that were selected as the most important was to improve the management. And the most important way to do that was to give voice and vote to the fishing communities and how they manage their strategies. They also mentioned that diversifying their fishing resource was very important, not only outside of fishing, but also what they fished on different species, and of course, diversifying different income strategies. They also recognized that increasing capacities was very, very important. Because what we got from these workshops is that we needed participative solutions that involve the communities so that we could have sustainable fisheries. And so in the next phase, Julio is going to tell you about the pilot projects that were developed for this diversification. Thank you very much, Antonella. My name is Julio Martin from Coral Reef Alliance. And parting from all the information Antonella just shared with us, we now go to this part of having the financial support, the technical support, and the legal support for these associations in the communities. And to start this process, it's part of the work that we do is finding for strategic allies that we can connect with so that we can implement the different initiatives, including all of the process before. We were able to get a lot of information on the different communities, NGOs, government institutions, and community so that we could gather all of this information. This one. From the strategic allies, it is very important to mention one of our main partners was CCO, Cuerpos de Conservación de Omoa, to identify the next steps and implement the next steps. Also, the support of other groups of fishermen from the Dirección General de Pesca as an ally and as a strategic ally, and of course, municipal orders that we're all supporting in making part of all of this process. And in Tela, we also had ProLánzate, in which we were able to identify these organisms as strategic allies for the work that was going to be developed in the community. So moving from these strategic allies, we entered the workshops. Through the workshops that we carried out, we were able to identify three main points. The first point was that we were going to train people thinking about the work that was going to be done. So, of course, the initiatives were oriented in sustainable tourism and focused on this environmental tourism. It was very important for us to train or to make a training under a model that we have worked at Coral is training the trainers, which means to train them in good sustainable tourism practices adapted to each of the areas. We established 6 workshops using this methodology to be able to know a little bit more about sustainable tourism and how to implement these tools that we were giving them. As well, since these are organizations, we saw the necessity of strengthening their organizations through workshops on how to improve different abilities on leadership, entrepreneurship, and other different sets of skills. So we had all other new 6 workshops focusing on these strategies. And to implement all of these workshops, we worked on talking about first aid workshops to increase security and safety for tourism and for the tourists that came, but also for themselves. So based on all of the information that we gathered from these groups, from the different institutions, we focused on strengthening the abilities on sustainable tourism, but not only on like a logistic aspect or economical aspect, but mostly strengthening their abilities to be able to carry out these ecotouristic options in the best way possible and strengthening the community so that they can have adequate growth and improvement. We also did an analysis in all of the region with 11 different fishing associations. And we did an assessment on their legal status, that they have all of the necessary strategies to follow the law and to carry out all of their different necessities as communities. And what we were able to see was that one of the biggest weakness in these community works is that they don't have a legal structure. They don't have a legal base to be able to receive a project or to be able to diversify their strategies. So we saw this in these 11 fishermen associations, and we were able to give all of them support on how they could improve on this aspect. And based on this, we try to find out what was the best way to be able to help these organizations. And by this is creating a place where they could develop, where they could increase the amount of projects they have by having this legal structure, these legal bases, by strengthening their capacities and the legal framework and their economic basis, so that they could take advantage of all of the different projects that we could that they could achieve. 2 different fishing associations that we focused on and that we found that could give this guidance for the legal base. And then also coming from these workshops, we were from sitting with these key stakeholders and strategic allies, we started 3 pilot projects as sustainable means of life. And to be able to implement these 3 projects on sustainable tourism, it was very, very important to have for the workshops that were carried out before, because they were able to implement in their tours, in their different activities, all of the knowledge that they were provided. We selected three different organizations, Empresa de Servicios Múltiples, El Faro, Empresa de Servicios Múltiples Pesulaga, and La Caja de Arroyo, um, Caja de Ahorro y Crédito Pescadores Artesanales del Porvenir. That they already had a legal structure and they were already in the base in which they were reorganizing all of their structure and their legal strength. And so these pilot projects was able to strengthen the initiatives that they were already carrying out. This project, these pilot projects took with them to the different organizations and management team so that they could strengthen all of the logistics, all of their fund management, the control and financial control from this project, but also from other projects right now or in the future. We also gave a kit for tourism that included a first aid kit, that was related to the courses on first aid that they were given, life vests, GPS, binoculars, identification guides, and other things that could help them carry out sustainable fishery and sustainable tourism, so that they could carry out and strengthen their strategies. In the next one, we're going to show you a video where we see Nelson Valladares, which is the representative of one of the organization that was chosen. And he, as you can see, he is in one of the centers where they have been working, where all the help arrived so that we could strengthen them financially, logistically, and in the management area for their ecotourism projects. Hello, everybody. My name is Nelson Valladares. I am the president of El Porvenir, and today I want to thank Coral Reef for the support that has been given to us so that we can carry out our tourism project. Believe me when I say that everything that was donated is going to help us carry out our work, not only because we understand the importance of fishing, but also how we can diversify on tourism. But we are also working on planting mangrove. And I really want to thank you and believe me that all of the support that has been given to our organization is very, very important. We we hope that this is not the last time that we are given this support because we do lack a lot of infrastructure. And we hope that we can continue receiving this help so that we can continue developing and taking our families into the future. We know that Julio from Coral Reef has been giving us a lot of support. And in this occasion, we just want to thank you in the name of all the fishermen. That many, many thank you. And we hope that we can continue working with you in other projects and to tell you that here you have your friends and our support for whatever project you decide to carry out. It is important to mention something that Nelson mentioned, that there is a lot of necessity in these areas. Definitely, these organizations have a lot of necessity in a legal level. And all of these information was shared with all of the local organizations so that we can understand how we can continue helping all of the other different local organizations. In conclusion, we were able to carry out about 15 different workshops, teaching to around 71 fishermen, 3 different income diversification strategies were implemented, and legal support and for 2 different fishing associations, and that analysis, that legal analysis to understand the situation of these 11 fishing associations. Something that is very important to talk about is that Nelson is also a SAM, a MAR leader, so that he has been part of these projects on how these initiatives can continue strengthening different communities. And to finalize is a message that we also that we also tell the people is that the sustainable use of resources is something that goes beyond generations, and that the objective of finding the conservation of Cayman Crown and finding the conservation of the Mesoamerican Reef is basically so that the future generations can continue to enjoy and take advantage of the resources that they give it, because all the communities depend on it. So this is one of the main messages that we were carrying when we did the workshops. Here you have our emails if you want to ask any questions, and we are open to any questions. Thank you very much. We thank you all of our panelists for presenting all of these beautiful experiences in Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala. If there are any questions, you can write them in the chat. If not, you can visit our webpage where we are gonna put webinar, and you can ask your questions there and we can send them to the panelists. We also invite you to fill out the form that I just posted on the chat so that you can fill it out in any moment after the webinar. If there are any questions, you can activate your microphone. I think we have time for one question. Hola, Michelle. I'm Judith Morales from ARPAN. First, I want to congratulate all of the panelists on all of the work that they've been doing. And I had a question at a regional scale in terms of the work that you have been carrying out in a long period of time. Not for having the exact number, but about how long do you think these projects or these economic alternatives need support to be able to to be strengthened and to last time? Because we see, as Antonella said, that sometimes there it's kind of like there's many efforts to do things, but not all of them make it. So how long do you think is important to have the support so that these projects can continue over time? I can begin if you want. I agree with you, and sometimes we believe that the most important is the project, but a very important part is all that comes before the project, the selection, the research, and understanding what the community needs. And then what happens after the course. It is very, very important to give at least a monthly follow-up, and in the long term of at least 1 year, we need to continue checking that the initiative is continuing, because there's new challenges that are going to come up. And so it's important that they feel that they have support. And as we mentioned, not only on the abilities that they have and the skills they have, but also on the legal aspect. Guillermo, I don't know if you want to share anything in the time that these initiatives take in Guatemala. Yeah. So all of the previous process, as I mentioned in the project, in my presentation, was about 4 years in which we had to gain the trust of the communities. And from there, and from there we could be able to support and create technical support for these economic alternatives. Right now for this touristic bungalow, we are supporting in all of the process for the legal structure for the um, environmental impact studies, and of course all of the workshops that were carried out for the communities. And yes, as Antonella mentioned, it has to be at least a year or even maybe just continue having contact with these people, so that we can support them with the necessities that they might have. Because, for example, um, in another area around COVID, there was a project that closed because of all of the requisites that the health ministry was asking for them so that they could have a restaurant, and basically it finished because of a lack of communication from the community with us. They didn't ask for support for all of these paperworks, and so they decided to close the project. uh, so I think that it's very, very important to continue the communication, so that these projects can maintain themselves with time. Okay, thank you very much, Guillermo. Maybe we have a new question is if you have seen any impact on the reduction of fisheries when you have implemented these projects. Antonella, I don't know if maybe the side of Honduras or Guillermo, Guatemala, if you have seen actually a decrease in fishing. Well, in the case of Guatemala, I think that the fact that seeing that Belize and Guatemala are doing monitoring and vigilance, and they are protecting this area by different management strategies, has led that the fishing activities in this area is reduced. And so, as well, I think the communication that we have managed with the communities has has helped to to redirect them in a way so that they stop doing these activities in an illegal manner. See, in the case of Honduras, as well as with um, illegal fishing, we don't have a lot of data on it, and we're starting with new alternatives with that. Um, but with other alternatives, for example, in the Tela in the Bahia of Tela, we have seen a decrease in the fishing activities. But for Cayman Crown per se, in particular, we don't have data yet. Thank you very much to our three panelists, to Jose, Guillermo, Antonella, and Julia. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experience for these different strategies in the three countries. We thank you all for joining us, and we invite you to ask your questions and